Okay, Dandelion, we are here for part two of I guess we're calling this the founder's journey for lack of a better term, but we're in the NFT space. We are focused on, in this conversation, around marketplaces. Why don't we do a brief intro just in case people didn't see the first one? I do recommend everybody look at part one, which was about a week ago. We can point you to that in the comments, but give us the 30-second intro and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, great, Torius. Yeah, I'm Dandelion. I'm working on Archipelago, which is going to be a new NFT exchange marketplace, essentially a competitor to OpenSea. And we are kind of laser focused on serving the Artblocks community and just making a best in world experience for trading NFTs of generative art.
Yes, I love that. An alternative to OpenSea, and it's actually an open source project, and you're going to provide a back end that anyone can put a front end on to do their own marketplace to compete as well.
Yep, that's right. It's kind of part of our thesis of why OpenSea isn't kind of able to serve the communities using it as well as they would like, is that the nature of a closed source platform is you're kind of stuck with there are 7 engineers in the world who are allowed to add the feature you need. And even if you would add it yourself, not only is there no incentive to do so, you literally can't. And so we're going to make a kind of shared backend for order routing, because unfortunately right now that does need to be centralized infrastructure. Hopefully that can change once L2s are in prod, but for now we need a centralized order mempool. But we want to make it extremely easy for every community to build their own front ends on top of it. So, both communities like Artblocks could have already made front ends that are just really great at filtering trades, really great at exploring the art, and still serve as a marketplace. But then you could also have, imagine that for Cryptodes, imagine that for Bored Ape Yacht Club, just like every community being able to run their own market. And we're going to deliberately set up the fee structure so that the back end and the front end kind of share the trading fees. So there actually will be a financial incentive to build on top of Archipelago and create new little islands for trading different collections of NFTs.
That's perfect. Well, it seems like other people are looking to get into the NFT marketplace game. We had some news this week, small little company in the crypto space. What did you make of that?
I think it's exciting. Just goes further. I'm extremely bullish on NFTs, and I'm kind of in the Punk 6529 school of thinking that NFTs represent the perfect intersection of decentralized Web3 tech and the modern internet meme culture. And I think that's a very potent combination that really has the potential to be the killer app for Web3 and for crypto. So I think it's kind of validating that Coinbase also is excited and wants to get into it. I think that just on a purely practical standpoint, I'm kind of glad to see it because I think that it's going to be a good distraction for OpenSea. And I feel like it was kind of inevitable that once you're big enough, you kind of want to do all the things, but that doesn't really mean you're going to be good at all the things. And you can see Coinbase is kind of trying to copy Aave with the Coinbase Lend, although obviously that got killed by the SEC. They'll want to go and get a chunk of OpenSea. And I think from my perspective, one of the things that will differentiate Archipelago is that there are a lot of people launching NFT marketplaces in a sort of, I will build it and they will come, in a very very kind of broad sweeps kind of way. And I think that's tough because you risk getting fragmented liquidity. And I think that, or rather I know that Archipelago is going to be extremely focused on the Artblocks community. And the Artblocks community is really excited to have a better working tool that was kind of created by and for the community. And so I think that at least for where we're focused, I'm pretty confident that because we are paying very close attention, we're going to build a better product. And so if Coinbase enters, if Shoyu enters, it's great, the more the merrier. But I know that we're the only team focusing on this community. So I think we'll build something better for the community.
Yeah, I suspect that Coinbase is really just trying to think about features for the normies who are in the space. So you've got all this crypto, you've got a reason to have crypto. What do you do with it? Do you just sit in there and look at it? And so this is where we think about the DeFi products. We think about now NFTs. NFTs are so interesting. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but I have this working hypothesis that NFTs are for Web3 what Netscape Navigator was for Web1. That it's that spark that anyone could then could understand it and access, and just this idea that there's some actual value here that I get, even if I'm not in the space, even if I'm not a real techie, which you had to be before the browser back in the early internet days. And even if you're not really into crypto or DeFi or all the other things, all of a sudden we have something for the masses.
Yep. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think, I've been in crypto for a very long time, and that partly is because the way that my mind works, I love DeFi. I love complex, I spent a lot of my childhood just reading books on finance out of sheer interest. And so having like kind of crazy financial system built on cryptography, like it vibes for me, but does not vibe for most people. That's not where most people are at.
Right.
And I think it's telling that now I've got like, my cousin in Israel reached out to me for asking for advice on NFTs because he told me how like excited he is. And like as I was talking to him, he's not actually really in this for speculation. He's excited about it because he loves like skater culture. And now like there's this intersection of NFTs and skater culture. And he told me like, yeah, somehow this just feels like the old web is coming back where like everyone can make a blog and like form their own communities.
Right.
And I do think that's very exciting. And I think if you look at like the kinds of celebrities that are getting involved in NFTs now, you've had celebrities involved in crypto, the like Elon Musks of the world, because they're doing weird finance stuff. But now you've got like Snoop Dogg, you've got all these podcasters, you've got lots of people who are just mainstream entertainers. I think Paris Hilton's been really involved with NFTs. You've got just like mainstream presences who are not here for the like crypto financial speculation aspect. They're here for the culture aspect. And I think that's extremely, extremely bullish. And like, NFTs have existed now in a technical sense for a few years. I think Punks launched in 2017, but in a sort of cultural awareness point, they're only just like starting to show up on the radar. I saw in The Economist, they had a "What are NFTs" section on their homepage a little bit ago. And so I think it's going to be a very exciting couple of years for the whole space. And that's also goes to why I'm like happy to see Coinbase get in, because I do know I've got lots of friends who are interested in crypto, but are not at the level of comfort where they're self-custodying Ethereum wallets and like running hardware wallets. And, I onboard people, and it's actually a huge pain to onboard someone properly. You've got to work through all the MetaMask bugs. If you're using a hardware wallet, you've got to debug all these connection issues. Maybe you need to use Firefox and not Chrome. And so I know that Coinbase is going to just make NFTs accessible for a much larger population than the fully on-chain methods can right now. And I think that's exciting.
I agree. I think it's just going to bring more attention to the space. It's going to pull some people. I just think of it like top of funnel type of attraction. It's going to raise awareness. It's going to get more people in. More people will get out of the Coinbase ecosystem. They'll go other places, and some of them might discover Artblocks is their real passion. And I think it's really interesting that you focused on that. I know it's like a personal passion for you, maybe Artblocks. What a strong community. I mean, maybe the strongest community. That's probably not fair. It's one of the strongest communities, probably across all blockchain, but certainly in the NFT space.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about Artblocks as a community is like, it's difficult to say when you say like, what is the strongest community? It's like, okay, well, how do you define a strength? What does that even mean? Like, how are we reducing the world down to single scalars? But something I'll note about Artblocks is that a lot of NFT projects are kind of oriented around a drop, where there maybe like was one artist who made the drop, and now they're like not that involved. Larva Labs to the Punks, and then it's just like a community of collectors. But Artblocks is constantly engaging new artists, and the artists who are involved in Artblocks kind of keep on like engaging the community and creating more stuff. And so it's a really strong artist community. It's got really like strong ties between those artists and the collectors. I spent a lot of the time on Marfa last week just hanging out with some of my favorite artists in the space. And I do think that the way in which this creative talent is just like suffused in the community is one of the things that makes it so special.
Yeah. So why don't you tell people about Marfa? Because I don't think it's widely known. Right? We think about NFTs still being sort of the front end of the adoption cycle. Marfa, you'd have to be kind of an insider or follow insiders to even know it was happening.
So Marfa is the name of a small artsy town in Texas. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's like a 3-hour drive from the closest airport in El Paso. And the Artblocks team purchased a house there, and they've made it like the official Artblocks house. And so this was the first ever Artblocks like event in real life. And it kind of centered on the Artblocks house that had all of these like number zero mints kind of printed and shown on the wall. There was a giant mural that Tyler painted,
I
Fidenza
saw
mural.
that. Yeah, amazing.
And I knew that this was going to be special. I had to go because it's like, first of all, it's the first Artblocks event, so that's exciting. But second of all, it's in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And my experience is that the more difficult it is to get to an event, the better it's going to be, assuming people go, because
Right.
you kind of have to be a true believer. It's a little bit like the difference between Burning Man and Coachella, right? Coachella is easy to go to, just buy a ticket and show up, and there's like food and hot dogs, and everything is like commercially set up for you. Burning Man is miserable to go to. It's in the middle of the desert. There's no like water, there's no like electricity being provided, and you need to do everything yourself. And the result is the people who are Burning Man are like really passionately committed and like bringing a lot to the space. It's just a way more interesting and memorable event. And so, as compared to other NFT events that are maybe more comfortable or convenient or more widely promoted, I knew that Marfa would be special, and it was.
So we've just come out of a pandemic. NFT space preceded the pandemic, but obviously it's gotten a lot of bigger since then. You're there with other Artblocks creators, collectors, people behind the company. Had you met many of these people in real life before, or was this the first time?
Mostly it was the first time. I'd met a couple. I'm trying to think who in Artblocks had I actually met. I'd met Dmitry Cherniak, Aaron Penne, a couple Seattle-based collectors in real life, but the vast majority of the people I was meeting there was my first time meeting them in real life. But in many places it didn't like we had already like been talking so much over months of discussing collections or discussing things we're doing together that it didn't feel like meeting a stranger, even if it was the first IRL encounter.
Well, that's a really interesting takeaway, because this is one of the first types of experiences people are having where they've really been. It's not that this has been unheard of in the past, that we've had online relationships and then met in person, but obviously so many people have been isolated over the past year and a half, and has spent more time having these digital relationships. It was probably just fun to be around people that you've only really had this digital relationship with in the past.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, I grew up playing World of Warcraft. I grew up in suburban New Jersey where you needed a car. You can't drive a car until you're 16, and you need a car to visit anyone. So there's just a lot of downtime, like sitting at your own house without much to do. And I got super into World of Warcraft in my like early teen years, and was just like online all the time with these groups of people where we were like going on adventures together, getting loot together, relating, forming groups and rivalries. And in retrospect, I feel like WoW is like the perfect training ground for participating in this emerging metaverse that's showing up. Including like having like an auction house and like trying to like compete to like get the best pieces of loot. And there's this awesome person in the space named Erin. She's an artist and a collector, and she's 14, and she is just killing it. Right, like she minted a ton of loot for free, and then like traded it for CryptoPunks. She got like 30 toads, like when toads were like brand new and no one was valuing them. And it just warms my heart to see her succeed, because it's like, oh yeah, like me at 13, I was doing this and it was like fake, because it was just like, oh, I've got an asset on Blizzard servers that's not really my property. It's just something they deign to pretend that I have. And at any moment they can like take it away from me if I don't like pay my monthly subscription or something. And now it's like 15 years later, and the same cycles are repeating, but this time it's all real. This time if you own a punk, the punk is actually yours. It's not just like Larva Labs says it's yours until they change their mind. So yeah, I think in that sense, it's part of why I'm so passionate about this space, is that it kind of is a dream come true for me, of like being a kid and having these digital worlds, and like they were real to me but fake to everyone else. And now the digital worlds, by virtue of the decentralized like Web3 tech, are real to everyone.
So I want to go back to Marfa, but just in general on this topic, what do you think the right balance is for you then, in terms of, we have the metaverse, we'll just call it like, for lack of a better term, people argue this, but the metaverse relationship with people. So some sort of online distant relationship. geographic distance, versus the in real life. We used to have maybe more predominantly in real life and then just a little bit online, very segmented. Now it seems to be flipped, just because of the circumstances and maybe the tools and proclivities. For you personally, what do you think the right balance is? Just like a couple of in-person things a year, or like every week? What do you think?
I think it depends on the where I'm inclined to go with this is kind of like from like a needs-based perspective. Like I think that personally, I'm someone who enjoys let's say like physical, emotional, and intellectual intimacy or like connection. And I would say that in Artblocks and these communities, you can get tons of intellectual connection. There are just I think that the AB community is just like fascinating. And take for example, like two people who I really like in the space are Dmitry Cherniak and Tyler Hobbs. Mm-hmm. And they're both incredibly talented, like passionate artists. They're also both successful startup founders. They can wear many hats, and they're both just really thoughtful and kind people. And the space is just full of people like this. Look at Eric Snowfro. He's such a sweetheart, so thoughtful. A lot of the great collectors, AC, Kate, Dinosaur, Han, just super enjoyable people to talk to. So I think that as far as having great conversations, it's just the Artblocks community and the NFT community in general is just full of wonderful people to connect with. But then the great downside is that if you care about physical intimacy, you can't give people hugs, you can't go out on nice little cafe dates and drink a fine bottle of wine over the internet. Maybe we'll get there with the metaverse or VR or something, but we're definitely not there yet. And so for me, dancing is a really big part of my life. I came to Seattle, where I live, in part because there's a really good fusion dance community here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I get a nice balance where, I hang out with my Artblocks peeps and we talk about art and technology all the time. And I hang out with my real life dancer friends, and we host little COVID precautious dance parties. And I also tell them a ton about NFTs and art because I'm just generally overflowing with enthusiasm. You can't see it here, but my house is just full of AB prints all over the walls. So yeah, I think that from my perspective, I've got a balance I'm pretty happy with.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so just to close out on Marfa, you talked about getting to hang out with everybody. Anything come out of that maybe new ideas or something interesting that maybe you hadn't seen before or you hadn't thought about before? As you walk away from that, you're like, I have these great relationships. Was there anything else that stood out?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that stood out. I think one thing I'll say is it was a very fecund weekend as far as coming up with ideas for collaboration and ways to work together with people in the space. I've had for a while an idea that we've only begun to scratch the surface of what's possible from a generative art perspective if we really leverage the potentials of Solidity and not just of the front end algorithms. Uh-huh. You look at something like autoglyphs. That was a breakthrough project, not just because of the beautiful renders of the glyphs, but because of the way that it was made fully on chain. And I think that there's room for a lot more of those breakthroughs where leveraging Solidity creates something really a really new kind of experience. And so I had chats with a few artists where there's some collaborations that I have in mind there. But I'll be quiet about what they are. But I'm kind of excited to try to push the envelope there a bit. I chatted a ton with Sofia Garcia about the auction, the digital, that she's organizing in Miami this December as part of Art Basel Miami. And I highly recommend people to go there, especially if you can go in person, because I think one of the parts of her vision is to really show how to properly display this generative art and how to properly curate it and portray it. Because one of the things, if you've been following with the Christie's auction, there was a lot of frustration where they don't really understand the space and they didn't really understand how to just display and show this art to its best extent. I think there was a lot of frustration where they kind of, they had some CryptoPunks on auction and they went and they were being cute and they just hid tiny CryptoPunks around the space. They didn't really display them front and center. And it's yeah, okay, I can see why if you're a traditional art person, you're like, lol, these ugly punks. I guess I'll just put them in as like some kind of like goofball Easter egg. But it's like, no, the crypto punks are actually like the forefront. Like they need to be like front and center and appreciated together, and not like scattered like confetti on the edges of the thing. And so I think Sophia is going to really do like the first really great job of running an auction for generative art. And Archipelago is going to be providing the back end to actually like operate the auction. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, I think that the biggest thing that Marfa showed me was just I think that we've got a really strong community around Artblocks, and I think it's a community that's going to be around for the long term. One of the things that you can really tell that's actually, you sometimes you join these NFT communities and you look at the discussion and everyone is like, just like focusing on, oh, where's the floor price? Where's the floor price? What's going to go up? What's going to be 20% tomorrow? And when they're focused on money, it's actually ironically a very bearish indicator for the project.
Yeah.
I think the less you're focused on money, the more likely it is the project will actually be worth a lot of money. Because what matters is the cultural relevancy. What matters is the community. And if you're focused on, as I think was the case with Artblocks, if you have a bunch of people who are really just focused on appreciating the art and wondering what kinds of new, beautiful art we can make, that is just a really, really strong sign to see. And that was just there in spades last weekend.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. And it sounds like you just made some news, you announced some news that you're going to have Archipelago as the back end for the auction. And
oh yeah. For the digital in Miami.
Because I don't think that's out there yet.
Yeah, you're right. I've not announced that. I should probably tweet that.
Well, we'll let you figure it. We'll let you figure out how you want to actually announce that. But congratulations. That's
thank you.
It's great validation.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
obviously
excited.
high profile activity, so should draw a lot of attention.
Yeah, I imagine so. And like, I'm excited to be helping another, my friend and another group in the space. And like, it's one of the things where like, if they use OpenSea is going to take 2.5%, and then they kind of lose control of the experience. And so they were talking about like contracting a group to like try to build the auction backend for them. But these groups all wanted to like also take like, charge a lot more. And then I was like, hey, we're actually already building this, and we already like want to like succeed together, so let's do it. So it's one of those just like nice things just kind of working out. That's but yeah, pivoting a bit to Archipelago and Marfa, one of the things that really stood out to me there was just how excited the Artblocks community is for Archipelago. It just seemed like pretty much every person I talked to, they would like see my name tag and be like, oh, Dandelion, how's Archipelago going? What's happening there? And so it was just really cool to see how much support there is in the community and how much desire there is to move over once we got this up and running.
Oh, that's super. Okay, so let's transition to the update. So we laid in part one, we laid out the journey to date, which started several months ago, but has been very active, at least for the last 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, I think really like the journey started in a conceptual sense. So you could say the journey started when I joined Artblocks in April. But as a matter of fact, it's actually working on Archipelago. I think that it's been like 3 weeks now in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And so you want to talk a little bit about some progress you made since last week. Yeah. And so I think we want to focus on the front end today, correct?
Yeah. So the main, let's see. So the arc of, as I just to like kind of like recap, as seen in last episode, Archipelago started 3 weeks ago in kind of like a fit of passion on my part of just like, we were all talking on Twitter about how frustrated we were with OpenSea, and had all these people DMing me being like, you should just make an OpenSea competitor. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I will. And so I tweeted out that I was going to build this. At the time, I imagined a 2-week timeline, which I tend to be a little bit chronically optimistic when it comes to software engineering projects. It's not the first time that I've started off a little bit faster than it actually wound up being. And I would say that the kind of the main progress I had given as of our last update last week was that we have the smart contracts written, which I actually just went to put some finalizing, like polishing touches on them yesterday, but like the smart contracts are essentially done. And we've got a team together. It's a 3-person team. It consists of me as, your kind of like business development, like product and relationship, and also like software engineering kind of like everyone on this team has multiple hats. So I'd say for me, it's like the kind of like BD and like relationships and like engineering hat. For William, he's just got 3 software engineering hats stacked on top of his head. He's like an amazing at pretty much every part of the stack, and particularly at like smart contract, like security reviews is just really a strength of his. He can really like see all the implications that the code is written. And then we've got Ian, who's a really talented front-end designer, a really talented front-end engineer, and also a like legal and regulatory policy expert. He used to work at the blockchain. He used to work with the Blockchain Association, doing like crypto policy stuff. He is a lawyer, and I think that this space is only going to get more complicated from a regulatory perspective, unfortunately. Sure. So I'm really glad to have him on the front end. I'm also really glad to have him when we need to start thinking about legal stuff. And so the past week was really the first week in which this team is just like together and executing.
Right.
And so since the smart contracts are essentially done, we've been working mostly on the back end and the front end in the past week. And one of the things I think about a lot for Archipelago is what is our go-to-market strategy? Because ultimately, all of the liquidity already is on OpenSea. And that creates a chicken and egg problem of like, why will a buyer use Archipelago if the sellers are all on OpenSea? And why will a seller use Archipelago if the buyers are all on OpenSea? And I think we have a couple good answers to that. One is that as a buyer, you can use Archipelago because we'll have better features. Most notably, the ability to put bids on whole collections and bids on whole traits, which lets you kind of like potentially deploy capital a lot more effectively. And as a seller, you'd want to use Archipelago because our fees are going to be lower, 1% versus 2.5%. And so especially when you're starting to look at like these high value pieces, saving 1.5% on every sale is kind of material. But there's still the kind of the chicken and egg problem there, because you need to like spin that flywheel of getting those first sellers who are like, I want to save 1.5%, and getting those first buyers who want to use the features. And so what we're planning to do actually first is focus on the other angle of frustration with OpenSea, which is that as an experience for exploring Artblocks collections, it's just not a very good experience. Doing stuff like find me all of the pieces that match this trait, or even just being able to like quickly like scan through the art. It's just kind of slow and cumbersome. So what we're planning to do is start by launching the kind of best in class Artblocks Explorer for just like being able to like dive through all the art and look at it. Think if you've used Stefan Contiero's filter blocks tool, it'll be kind of similar to filter blocks. Or it'll be kind of like the new Artblocks website that launched. But it's going to be kind of explicitly like, on the one hand, we just want the performance and the like ease of use and simplicity to be like a 10 out of 10. And just seeing the stuff that we're working on, I'm like already excited to be able to use it, because I'm just constantly looking up art, and like all these existing tools are kind of slow, and I know ours is going to be fast, so I can't wait for it. But what we're going to do then is we're going to start like layering in the market features into this. So it'll kind of start as a tool that's immediately useful because you can use it to just find what's out there. And we plan to integrate the OpenSea data. So if you want to be able to just like, even if you're just buying an OpenSea, you can use our tool as a much more efficient way to like, okay, filter the stuff that's on sale, filter by price, find all these traits I care about. And then when you actually want to bid or buy it, you just click through to OpenSea and do it there. And so the idea is that even putting aside the chicken and egg problem, if you're an existing collector of Artblocks, we want to make a tool that's extremely useful. And then we'll start adding more features to it, where then it'll be like, okay, you've done this like trait sort, and you've found looking at all the archetype corners, or you're looking at all the archetypes with this particular palette that you like, and you can make a bid for all of those pieces from the UI. And you're searching through and you want to sell one, you can like list it there as well as list it on OpenSea. And then maybe you'd even go and try to like, if you're working with someone who's going to buy it, you'd be like, hey, can you please like fill it on Archipelago because I want to save 1.5%. And so that's basically is part of the plan now, is just like produce a better front end experience for Artblocks collectors, so that our tool will be relevant from the start and then only get better as people add liquidity to it.
Okay, so you said a lot there. So just thinking about the strategy, break this down. So one, you've got the Explorer, which essentially is a discovery, search, visibility tool. And then it would seem logical that eventually, after after some period of time, you had the features where people could actually view and then purchase in the secondary.
Yep.
And sometime after that, you'll have enough liquidity and enough people together that want to do this. You'll bring buyers and sellers together for mints. Or no?
Yeah, I think that. I mean, I'm not sure if when you say for mints, like I think that the actual minting is still going to happen on the Artblocks platform.
Yes.
But this is also one of the things I'm thinking about is like right now, particularly that first mad scramble when there's a popular drop. And like, for example, like with Meridians, which was a drop that happened almost exactly 2 weeks ago. It was one of the most like anticipated and kind of exciting drops to happen in a while. Excuse me. It takes during the first few minutes, everything is just super weird on OpenSea. They don't include the pieces in the right collection, and so it's in this like mystery collection that's got some weird name. And the OpenSea caching server takes like 20 minutes to get the renders for anything. And so initially you've got all of these tokens on OpenSea that you can buy, and they've got a price and just no image. And so if you're enterprising, you'll be like racing to copy paste that token ID into the Artblocks website to then like see a render to then decide if you want to buy it. And I think that we can, among other things in Archipelago, make a much better experience where we'll like work with Artblocks and like make sure that we're actually getting the renders and the data for these tokens like instantly, not like when our caching server happens to look. And this is again one of the advantages of saying we're going to focus on Artblocks and not we're building just a tool that will work for everyone in like a one size fits all way. And so my hope is that once we've got the market like up and running, we can go and work to focus particularly on new drops, and especially the drops where like the community is excited and people all know about it, and kind of bring that whole project onto Archipelago and just kind of establish that liquidity is there from the get-go. Because my observation is that liquidity tends to be pretty sticky in a market once it's established. And you can look, for example, at the fact that CryptoPunks market is not an OpenSea. They're still on the OG CryptoPunks contract, even though that contract, having been written in 2017, is in many ways a worse product than OpenSea. But the liquidity is already there, so people use that market. And so I think that once, it implies on the one hand that even if Archipelago is a better product, migrating liquidity from OpenSea is going to be difficult because it tends to be sticky. But conversely, once there are projects where Archipelago becomes the de facto market for them, that will be sticky as well.
Right. Well, I was working on marketplaces in the 90s, some of the very first internet marketplaces, and liquidity is the hardest thing. And you need two-sided liquidity. And so what happens is usually the first to scale maintains that unless there's some really significant breakthrough in technology, potentially UX, but usually it's a technology breakthrough which shakes it. With that said, we see time and time again with marketplaces, you might have one generalist who gets the liquidity and maintains that. And maybe there's a couple other people, like maybe Coinbase comes in and tries to knock that off. But then you have a lot of specialists that pop up because different communities have different needs. So it seems logical to me that the Artblocks community being so strong would be the type of place where you could get liquidity around that. And I think it's a really savvy architectural decision to make that available to other people, because obviously cryptodes, where they are today, they could basically run their own marketplace on their own site. There's enough demand around something like that, and there's not everyone can get there, but I can see other topically oriented or project oriented marketplaces really being desirable, so that you can create that customized user experience.
Yeah, and I think that also it'll be interesting to see how the floor bidding and trait bidding features. I think how all those serve in differentiating the market. My thesis is that these are going to be really valuable features, and you see that like there are people who have invested the effort in creating OpenSea bidding bots. You know, there's like Fidenza Master for 2069 is prolific. There was like Dr. Burry. There are just these different accounts that have been running botters, and they do very well by having those bot bids, because every once in a while somebody decides they want to drop their Fidenza on the floor. And sometimes they're really good Fidenzas. Like there's this one, it still bugs me. There's a Fidenza that's a really nice Fidenza that got sold for 50 ETH to a floor bid. And I think that there are a lot of people who would happily put liquidity, and we could have like a really like robust market of just like floor bidding, not just by the collection, but then by the trait. You know, maybe you particularly like I love the peach plum subscape palette. I would happily leave a bid out there for like, just give me your peach plums. If you don't want them, I'll take them. And right now it's just really hard to do that because you need to be running the spotting infrastructure. You need to like have like an AWS server somewhere that's actually like running live with your private keys that have got a bunch of ETH. So you need to be really confident, you know, how to secure this infrastructure so it doesn't get taken away from you. And I think that Artblocks in particular, because, you know, with CryptoPunks, maybe there are like 3 traits you care about. You know, I really want an orange side punk someday. So you can just like watch that market very carefully. But with Artblocks, you know, there's well over 100 projects. That's only going to continue to grow. Each project has dozens of traits. And so I think that the more that you have this long tail of interesting projects and interesting traits, the more the feature of being able to do project and trait wide bids is going to deepen the liquidity. And I think of that as a really asymmetric advantage where, like, on even footing, Archipelago is going to have a better liquidity story because architecturally OpenSea is not set up to handle these bids. Like, there's no way for them to add this feature because they need to write and deploy entirely new smart contracts, which would be really difficult for them. And it's not like you can just do a front end thing because your front end thing would be like, okay, you know, sign. You want to bid on fuzzy squiggles? Okay, sign these like 2,000 messages, one for each squiggle. You're not going to do it. And so we'll see how much like superior features like this are enough to migrate people to our market. And I think this is where I'm kind of optimistic that the mixture of, okay, we'll have a better front end experience, we'll have a better like back end feature set, we'll have a lower fee structure, and we've got tons of like engagement and awareness from the community. I think that any of these features independently would not be enough to displace OpenSea because being the dominant network with deep liquidity and strong network effects is such a strong moat. And my hope is that with these 4 factors in parallel, we'll be able to migrate people over.
There's one other functional aspect that you mentioned a couple of times sort of in passing in this conversation. One was really focused on speed. So you talked about the speed of search. You talked about the ability to update the cache immediately. The speed of being able to make the data available in general, because that's one way you do that. Do you think speed will be a differentiator here?
Yeah, I think so. I think from my experience, like, again, I've spent at least dozens of hours on OpenSea now looking for pieces. And especially when I'm in collector mode, and like, let's say that, you know, I want to get a Meridian. Okay, so I go first, find the project in OpenSea and like filter by like things that are for sale, price lowest to highest, which conceptually is simple, and in practice is kind of annoying because OpenSea treats all of Artblocks curated, or all of Artblocks Playground in this case, is a single project, and so you've got to go and find the trait that's called like the All Meridian trait. In practice now, I've just got a browser folder with dozens of bookmarks that have already got the like search terms properly populated. But then you actually want to like look at all of these meridians that are for sale, and like ideally maybe you'd have an interface where you can just like click through like next, and each time like very quickly see like a high res render of a meridian. But in practice, OpenSea has got a tiny little screen in the corner that shows you the art. Which is like fine for CryptoPunk, right? It's also fine for like a Cool Cat or Bored Ape Yacht Club because these are small images, but it's not great for the kind of art that's being shown on Artblocks. And they do not serve you a cached image of the piece. They do the full live render in the browser, which means for a piece like the Meridian, it animates in over several seconds, which is like, if what you wanted to do, like there's times when you would want that, but when I'm just looking to like try to evaluate the 20 pieces that are in sale and decide which one I want to buy, I don't want to wait 5 seconds for the load And then in practice, because I want to see them full scale, I don't want to see this tiny little render. I want to actually look at the details. I need to go through OpenSea, and then I need to click View on Artblocks, which brings you to the Artblocks website, where it also wants to do a slow like render. And then I need to click the link on the Artblocks website to show me the image. So I've gone for each step, it's like 4 clicks to just like look at the high-res image. And Archipelago's front end is being designed by people who just want to be able to do these workflows really cleanly and efficiently. So you're going to click through to the thing and just immediately have like front and center, like a high res render that our caching server like figured out the right resolution for you. So you're not even downloading the whole giant image that you'd be printing on a poster. You're downloading the size that's exactly right to show you like a crisp image so you can make a decision and then go and look at some more. And so I think it's stuff like this that will help make the experience of buying Artblocks and Archipelago just feel much like smoother, much more efficient, much more intentional than doing it on OpenSea. Is that the case?
Yeah. So you mentioned 4 things. I would add speed as a 5th, because I have a feeling that everyone will be won over by one or the other features, but ultimately the delight will come from the speed, because it is interminable waiting for OpenSea and some of these other websites to load.
Yeah. We've definitely, it's been a big focus of the team just in this past week, is like really getting all the speed details.
Perfect. Focus on speed first. I wish more people would do that. Dandelion, you want to give a teaser for next week, or do you want to be mysterious?
Let's see. What would my teaser for next week be? You know, I think I'm not sure. I think I'll have to be mysterious, because I didn't think through what will be happening next week, and I've got ideas of what it might be, but I don't want to tease it unless I've thought through it offline for at least a few minutes to think if it's like a good thing to set expectations for. So we'll just have to like keep the excitement for folks to tune in next week and find out what it is that we have to share then.
What he meant to say, folks, I'm sorry, what they meant to say, folks, is I would really like to tell you what we're going to do next week, and it's going to be amazing, but I'm going to have to keep it quiet for now. But but come back next week. Is that what you
exactly want? Yeah. I need to learn this. I need to learn this from NFT Twitter. You know, I'm seeing like people like Cosmo de Medici. You know, they get so much mileage out of just saying, I will be addressing the nation, you know, next week, and like hold on to your pants or such. So yeah, hold on to your pants.
Make sure notifications are on.
Yeah, there's going to be a whole new volcano in the Archipelago chain. Just you wait. Find out more details next week.
Okay, in between now and then, you want them to go to Archipelago_art. Is that how it is in Twitter?
Yeah, you know, I continue to be mostly just like tweeting Archipelago stuff from my own account. But I should start using Archipelago art at some point soon. But in the meantime, Dandelion_ETH on Twitter. And I'll probably, you know, I'll retweet this podcast and like some just keep people appraised of how the project's going.
Perfect. I'm having a great time doing this. Thanks a lot for joining us. Everybody,
yeah, likewise.
Come back next week. Subscribe, all that other good stuff. We look forward to seeing you. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you, Great Tories.